Thanks very much. All right, so I'm Pierre Montagano. I'm the Director of Business Development at CodeOcean, which is a Cornell incubated startup. And we've created a reproducibility platform around computational sciences that I will talk a little bit about later. But I wanted to start off, I started my career off as a teacher and then switched over into textbook publishing. And spent about 10 years in textbook publishing with some really big publishers like Pearson and McGraw before moving over to Cambridge University Press. And I think that it was a great experience early on, because I think textbook publishers very early on realized that their content was becoming commoditized, right? There were so many editions of intro psych you could do, and there were so many price hikes you could create before students were just saying, there's no way I'm paying $150 for an intro psych book when I can find everything on the web. And so what it really forced us early on to do was look at how we could transform ourselves into being relevant. And so I was involved early on in the days of creating learner management systems. And that progression, first of all, went from print to digital, which was really easy, right? I mean, you took your textbook and you created an ebook, or you turned the pages into PDFs, or, in the early days, we'd stick a CD-ROM in the back, and that was the answer. But actually going from digital, from becoming a digital publisher to actually becoming a platform company. The same way Netflix is a platform company. So if you ask people at Netflix what they are, they'll say they're a platform company. They won't say they're a content producer, right? Even though they create and they deliver content. What for them is really important is the platform. The same way if you ask someone at Amazon, what are you? They'll say, we're a platform company. They're a merchandiser, but they don't care what they sell. They'll sell anything, right? What they care about is the user experience. They care about how many clicks it takes the user to get to the checkout or satisfaction. Right, and so moving from being a print publisher to being a platform company, that for me is what's going to separate the winners and the losers in the future. And I think the way you do that, in my opinion, is by changing the center of your focus. And publishing companies, and I was at Cambridge, which has a 450-year history of publishing. The content was actually the very core of what we did. And I'm not suggesting that content is important. I think it's paramount of importance. But the putting the content at the very center of what you do, and then building your ecosystem around your content. There's this shift when you become a platform company to putting the user at the very center of what you do. And everyone in the room is going to say, oh, that's really obvious. I can't believe he's actually saying it, right? But actually, this mindset, the change in publishing companies, I think is one of the hardest things to do. So moving from a print publisher to a platform company, there are some capital expenditures behind that. But those aren't particularly difficult, or maybe they are for some publishers, but it's actually the mindset of changing from putting the content at the very center to putting the individual at the very center. And an example, I think, is these recommended article links, which were one of the first things we did when we went to a digital delivery, because they were easy. In the beginning, they were really based on like authors or similar content. But that's because we put the content at the center of what we do. If you put the user at the center of what we do, and speaking to the conversations we had yesterday about AI, then it all becomes about what the user patterns are, what the behaviors based on the usage. And now I'm involved in CodeOcean, which is a company that takes code and software and creates an executable environment for reproducibility and reuse. And using that example, in the past, we are currently right now, we're taking the data and software that's associated with the content and putting it in a repository somewhere. But if you look at it from the user point of view, why do users want access to code and software? It's because they want to reuse it, or because they want to actually run it. And if anyone's ever tried to go to GitHub and take the code and actually try to get it to run, we'll know that that's very, very difficult. So You know, and this falls into the reproducibility crisis as well, which I have, with 5 minutes, have no time to talk about. So I'm actually going to skip over this slide, but we can have discussions afterwards about it. But CodeOcean is actually, it's a reproducibility platform. It allows researchers to deposit their both their code, software, and input files, right? And also, and we Dockerize it. It's based off Docker technology, and regardless of the language, it all fits into some of a computational capsule, sort of, that's preserved, so that other researchers can go to this platform and simply press the run button and reproduce the results. And if they want, they can also change the inputs and augment the code. So here's a bigger picture of it, and the environment is split up into 3 panes. On the far left, I'm dyslexic, so I'll get this. Okay. On the far left, you'll have your input files, your code, your software, and then underneath you'll have, you can set up in your data sets. In the middle will actually be your code, right? And other researchers can go there, or the researchers depositing code can actually go there, and it's actually editable. You can actually write code directly into that window. And then on the far right will be the results pane, and you can actually click on the results file, and that's what that image there is. You know, sometimes it's an image, sometimes it's a graph, other times it's, you know, a CSV file, whatever. And you can have that run button on the top where researchers can just run that code. And so what we've actually done as well is we've created a widget in the same way YouTube has a widget that allows you to just take some embed code, some HTML code, and drop it onto your publisher website, so that the code environment, this computational environment, can sit at the very point of the article. And here this is just an example, but we've also gone live with some other vendors that I can point you to. So what does it really give us, I think, in terms of focusing on code and focusing on the user? It creates reproducibility, impact. You know, it's proven that articles that have associated code and software have a higher citation rate. It facilitates reuse, you know, speeding up the pace of science. If people can go and immediately reproduce what they've find in the article, then it allows them to download the code, augment the code, giving proper attribution to the original researcher, and develop derivative works. And then it also helps us, as publishers, move beyond the PDF and really start looking at ourselves as a platform company versus just a straight publishing company. Thanks very much. Thank you.